Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media. Mic back on. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching us online. Sorry if you couldn't hear me earlier. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. So my name's Martin O'Leary. I'm the head of studio here. I'm a white man in my 40s with long hair and a beard, wearing a black t-shirt with some extremely faded crystallography diagrams on it. It just looks like a mess now. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hat disking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So an especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? A few of you. Hello, welcome. Welcome. This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England, as well as by generous donations from members of the public, just like yourselves. So we offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. We're also a habitat for local wildlife. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. There's a kitchen back there. You're welcome to grab some tea or coffee or a glass of water. We have a quiet space just next to this space, so if you need to take a break at any point, it's just, well, my left, your right, around the corner there. There's a room, there's some bean bags, there's some sofas, there's a door that closes. So if you need to just peace out, feel free to go in there. We're not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, that is real. So the fire exits are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right, on either side. But in any event, should we need them, the studio team will direct you towards them. And finally, there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor just next to the kitchen. So there will be a Q&A at the end of this talk. So if you're watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lautem is here. He will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone. That's so the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at pmstudiouk.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Or, I'm told it's working today, you can watch your streams on LinkedIn. Pervasive Media Studio on LinkedIn. It's very exciting for people who like LinkedIn. All right, our speakers for today are Kyle Ramsey and Jonny Crew. Kyle is a programmer and educator who works with audio, physical computing, and interactive design. Jonny is a sound editor and designer at Wounded Buffalo, whose stock in trade is natural history and wildlife documentary series. Today they're going to share techniques used in sound design for these animated documentaries, especially from Kyle's MyWorld Fellowship in Residence that explored using spectral processing techniques to manipulate animal sounds. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Kyle and Jonny.
Thank you.
So my name's Kyle, and during this talk we're going to talk about processes which we can use for manipulating animal sounds to create sounds which maybe don't exist or maybe existed in the past. Focusing on sound as like a shape,
Yeah, sound as a shape and sort of being able to kind of manipulate it in a kind of more playful way, I suppose, is the idea. Yeah. My name's Jonny. I'm a sound editor at Wounded Buffalo, and so who are Wounded Buffalo? We are a team of sound designers and mixers, and we make soundtracks for TV programs. Now, we don't do music, we do sound. A lot of people don't really know that sound is created after the fact, so after the film has been shot, we lay in sound that's appropriate. It's all accurate, but it's a necessary job because on location you can't always film and record sound at the same time. So wildlife filmmaking is a big part of what we do. We do animation as well. And so when we got the opportunity to work on Prehistoric Planet, that was a boon for me because that was a chance to combine the two things, so animation and wildlife filmmaking. But here's a little look at some of the things that we've done in the past. Showreel coming up. So that particular showreel demonstrates a lot of work that we've done in sound design. So that means taking sounds and manipulating them and morphing them and turning them into something other. And I touched upon Prehistoric Planet before and how that would combine the two elements of animation and wildlife. So the idea really was that we had to make sounds that were authentic, but I mean, how do you make authentic dinosaur sounds? That's a kind of an oxymoron in a way, isn't it? It's just like, you know, but the science guided us in terms of contemporary species like seagulls that are descended from dinosaurs, and we could use some of those sounds and turn them into dinosaurs. Now, how do you do that? So you record existing sounds. So we might record the seagull there, and we can make something else out of it by using some of these techniques. Time stretching to slow the sound down. Why would we slow it down? To make it sound bigger. The dinosaurs are bigger. Equalization, bass and treble, I mean kind of more basic terminology, making the sound lower or bringing out the high end of it. Reverb, resonance, I've put there. Reverb, not necessarily resonance, it's also to do with reflective spaces,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But Kyle's going to talk you through some of these more technical things in a bit, but I use it for resonance. I want the sound to sort of feel like it's coming from a bigger animal, a sort of a larger kind of creature. And then layering, we're combining sounds together to kind of create this one sound, hopefully, that feels like it's coming from one creature. So talking you through how I kind of did this for this creature here, a Quetzalcoatlus. I've got this chicken called Bluebell, Evil Bluebell, we call her, and she's got this incredible squawk. You know, she sounds really, really angry, and I thought maybe that might be a good source for a Quetzalcoatlus when it's chasing off a rival. So this is kind of how she sounds in the original. So do I need to press play?
Yeah, you press.
Oh, I see. There we are. Cross Bluebell. So then maybe I'll slow her down, taking a smaller section of her call. Then maybe I'll put it through something called a transient shaper to kind of give it a bit more in-your-face sound. And that's what I need to do, isn't it? So she sounds a bit closer, a bit more full-on, transforming now from Bluebell maybe into a Quetzalcoatlus. And then the finishing touch was to add some reverb, convolution reverb, which Kyle's going to talk you through in a bit as well. To kind of, in that case, bring out some of the beakiness of that Quetzalcoatlus that we saw just now. So that's a kind of really basic skip through the kind of processes that I do in my work. I play around with sound. I mess around until I find something that sounds good. And I use certain tools in order to do that, plug-in tools and with the sound editing software. But then we got this opportunity to have a fellow come and visit us, work with us, and that fellow is Kyle. We were given this opportunity through MyWorld and Watershed and the university, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to have a chance to kind of dig into what these plugins actually do and how we could make our own one, maybe something custom that would sort of allow me to play with sound a bit more, maybe in an instinctive kind of way. But I don't know how to program stuff. Kyle does.
A bit.
Yeah.
We'll see how well.
Okay. All right then. Let's see how that goes, shall we?
Yeah. So the main aims of the fellowship to explore is kind of in the title, like virtual convolution. The idea of kind of capturing sounds from virtual environments. So in this case, we're thinking about 3D shapes. Ways that we can use 3D shapes to manipulate the sound in some way. So you'll see some examples in a bit, which kind of go through different. I made like web apps just for testing, but ways that we can use sound and adjust the shape or vice versa. And the aim that kind of at the end of this, I wanted some plugins. We're going to go over what plugins are in a second, which can be distributed for anyone to use. There are some which are free and available. There's a QR code at the end, which you can download them from. And to use specifically in what's called digital audio workstations. So this is software which is used by editors or musicians to record or manipulate audio and make tracks. Popular ones used in like industry, things like Pro Tools, but people also use like Reaper and Ableton as well. So we'll quickly go over what a audio effect is, or what an audio plugin is. I do apologize, it might seem a bit like dark at the moment, but essentially how it works, we have like an audio input. So this can be a live input, like a microphone, or a pre-recorded sample like we saw before. And then we put that through some sort of DSP, digital signal processing, some sort of effect, algorithm, whatever, to change that sound in some way. We're going to focus on reverb today. But one thing to note is that you will see this term dry and wet quite a lot. So you'd imagine the wet sound or wet signal has had the effect applied, and the dry signal is just a sound which hasn't had an effect applied. And often you mix them at the end, something known as a wet and dry mix. But we'll go over that more later. This is just how basic effects kind of works in audio workstations. So we're going to talk a bit about reverb. I say a bit. Most of the talk is going to be about reverb. And reverb is just the continuation or the kind of like the persistence of sound in a space. So if I kind of make like a clap in this room, you kind of hear there's like a roll off. And this is used a lot in post-production audio to give a sense that a sound exists in a place, but you can also use it creatively, like Jonny's been doing in Prehistoric Planet. There's some diagrams. So here we kind of just have like a room, it's like a box, and we have our source, which is like our sound, and we have our listener, which could be a microphone or us. And here we just have a graph, I apologize, which is energy or loudness or volume and time. So when we create a sound, such as the clap I just did, sound is going to emit from all directions. We're using rays to visualize this. It's actually waves, but we're not going to talk about that for this. But what happens is that as we create a sound, energy comes to our ears, and we can kind of plot it here. So the first sound, which doesn't have any reflections, which is the first sound you hear, is known as a direct sound, no reflections. But as sound bounces around a space, depending on how absorbent it is, it loses energy. And then you get these things known as reflections, where the sound becomes a bit quieter, maybe some things happening to the frequencies. And this continues on until you have something which looks like this, which is known as an impulse response. We're going to go over what impulse responses are in a bit. Now, back to working with plugins, there's two main kinds of reverbs which you'll find in any kind of audio software. Something known as convolution reverb and something known as algorithmic reverb. And I've got another diagram. A convolution reverb kind of acts like a sampler. Do people use samplers before, like this kind of MPC, like when you like, I don't know, like drum patterns and stuff like that. Now, how convolution reverbs work is that we have our sample, which is our impulse response, and then we convolve that or kind of mix it with our input sound. So that can be microphone, instrument, sample, whatever. But if we want to change the reverb, we change the sample. So I'll go to the algorithmic one in a second. Examples of this, Pro Tools, you have Space Designer, it's a very popular reverb tool. And in Reaper, there's just reverb, which works in the same way as a convolution reverb. The other kind of reverb you have is something known as an algorithmic reverb, which doesn't use samples. It uses complex DSP, all pass filters, things like that, delay lines. And instead of being a sample, you kind of use like knobs or parameters to change the reverb as you go along. So we're not using impulse responses. We're trying to create reverb from scratch using various DSP. And again, some examples of these plugins in common DAWs, Reaper, and Pro Tools. You know it's Reaper because the UI always looks really outdated. And Pro Tools always has like a nice graphical user interface. But going back to convolution reverb, because this was kind of like the main focus of the talk and also the fellowship, is this sample we were talking about. So sometimes there's an IR file if you were to look up online. And again, it's kind of just the capture of a space's reverb. So again, if I was to clap and you hear that decay, this would give you a waveform which looks like this. So this is a waveform, and this is known as a spectrogram. You're going to see a lot of these. So with a waveform, this is going to plot how loud the sound is. It kind of looks like a fish skeleton sometimes, and it kind of just bounces off. This is a bit different. So we still have time going down here. But instead of loudness being depicted as this line here, the loudness of the sound is depicted by the colors. So generally, the closer to white it is, the louder that sound. And in here, this is frequency. So high frequency, low frequency. So we can see in this sound that we have a lot of energy in the lows, which is kind of how most sounds happen in the real world. And you get this kind of trail off. There's different ways you can capture impulse responses. You can do it, everyone can do it. All you need is a microphone and something kind of loud and impulse. I don't think that's the right term, but just like an impulse. You can use things like start pistols, popping a balloon, things like that. For more like scientific methods, people use something called a sine sweep, but we're going to ignore that for now. So this was how it might look like. So this was done in Brompton Cemetery in London. And what we have here, we have a huge balloon. Here you have a little needle, who's going to pop it. And here we have a microphone. I'm not going to talk about what microphone it is, but it's a microphone. In a second, you're going to hear like a little pop. So 1, 2, 3. So the balloon pop is the impulse, and then that decay you hear is the room's response, impulse response. Cool. So what we can do with that sample is we can mix it with any kind of input to make it feel like that sound happened in that space. So I'm just going to show you an example with a line raw. So that's the impulse response. And then you convolve them together to get something like this. So it kind of feels like there's a lion in Brompton Cemetery somewhere. Now, the idea is I wanted to kind of create something which could use shape to kind of change that space, this virtual space. So I began using tools. If anyone wants to know what specific software I use, they can kind of ask me at the end. It's all very accessible and free. So I kind of created this like graphical user interface, which allowed you to kind of create shapes, and it will draw these lines, which are kind of like our sound bouncing around, and you'd be able to capture various kinds of impulse responses from this. You can change various settings, such as frequency or whatever, and things like that. What I found, though, is that when changing all those shapes, 4 main things kind of changed how the sound changed, if that makes sense. So it's like the size of the shape, if it was convex or concave, so if the sound is round or if it has loads of indents. Absorption, so that's like a setting which kind of sets like how much the sound is absorbed by the walls. And also microphone and source placement. So I've got some just some vocals now, going through some separate shapes.
There once was a young rat named Arthur who would never take the trouble to make up his mind. Whenever his friends asked him if he would like to go out with them, he would only answer, "I don't know." He wouldn't say yes, and he wouldn't say no either. he could never learn to make a choice. His Aunt Ellen said to him, "No one will ever care for you if you carry on like this."
Now, I found that with a lot of those shapes, that the sound didn't change that much for how much the shape changed, if that makes sense. All the shapes were different, but the sound kind of sounded quite similar. There's different resonances and things like that, but nothing too drastic. And when you're working in post-production audio, you want to be able to like kind of really kind of change things on the fly and kind of like set in your settings. You want to make it a bit more kind of, I don't know, malleable, I guess.
Yeah, and I just wanted to interject at that point to say that, you know, this is a notion that I had that to just kind of like say, well, let's just play with the sound, you know, let's make these shapes. It's really complicated. And, you know, I set this task for Kyle to come up with these ideas. And not only is it complicated to put together, it's really tricky to get decent sound quality. So before you move on to your, you know, the next part of what you're going to talk about, you know, I just wanted to park it there and just sort of say, this so far has been quite complex to work on. And you've got demanding sound editors sort of going, it doesn't sound good enough, you know, or it sounds a bit unnatural, you know. So
yeah, I guess because
the plot thickens really. Yeah,
because usually I'm working with like art students, so anything can sound good. You know what I mean? If you really believe in it, I guess. But yeah, so I started working on a different tool, which kind of just focuses on having a shape, which you're going to hear a cow, and then you're going to be able to change just the size and how convex and concave it is using like noise displacement. So you can pitch it up as well, or pitch it down, pitch it really down, and you can really start kind of building up your sounds. All right. Cool. So then, yeah, so when we start changing this shape, it's going to change the impulse response here. So you can kind of see this graph here, which is our impulse response. One thing to note is the quality is dictated by how long you let the simulation run. How much time this PowerPoint is for all the cow sounds. But you can also, with this sound again, because it's like a sampler, we manipulate the impulse response. You can also like stretch the impulse response to get some quite drastic like shimmers. Anyway, we can leave the rest of it for now. I began again kind of focusing more on how I could kind of create shape. I wasn't worried too much about the sound bit just yet in this part. So I kind of made some some weird mock-ups. In this case, I was trying to figure out if it was like a kind of sculpt a ball. But I found that, again, it was really hard to like tone in. It's really hard to get like repeatable shapes, which again, for post-production, if you want to use the same thing over and over again, you want to be able to have something which can you make again. And also, I'm not very good at 3D graphics programming, so it actually breaks the shape in a second. Yeah, like so. So that wouldn't work. Again, so I can kind of continued playing around with these kind of graphical user interfaces. In this case, I've got like 4 different reverbs, and we're kind of blending in between them. And they're just like random impulse responses, which I've created using like Python and Matplotlib, which is like a library you can use for visualizing stuff. So you've got the dry sound, and then we're going to start bringing in these reverbs, which have got these kind of tonal qualities. Tonal qualities you can't hear. Infrasound. Anyway, so it was just like a fun little experiment. But it reminded me of something I saw like a while ago, and also like a couple researchers have. I'll get on to the researchers that looked at it in a bit. So I do have like boba kiki, so this experiment associating what's boba and which one's kiki. And most of the time it was, like I'm not going to quote the study, but generally this was boba and this was kiki because of the way it sounds and how like it feels. You know?
Yeah, that would be mine.
Yeah, that'd be your guess. Yeah. So then I started thinking about if there's ways that I can kind of map audio, so the qualities of audio, to specific things on like a shape. This is just a few different kinds of audio descriptors. So these are things which you can use to describe sound. They're all algorithms which you can put a sound through, and it will give you like some sort of arbitrary number. Spectral centroid is where most of those kind of frequencies lie, like in our spectrogram, you know, where most of those frequencies kind of base around. How wide that is known as the spread. Spectral flux is how quickly things change. So if a sound is very like tick, 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 then that's like quite a high flux. If it's just like that's like a low flux. Don't know if that's helpful. Tonality, just like how noisy the sound is. So what can we do to the sound, maybe? You know? So I kind of put it through this like audio visualizer just to kind of get an idea. So we've got some sounds here. Oh, sorry. This is the GUI just playing around with like a shape. You know, just seeing what kind of parameters I can change. This is just using a shader. And then what it will actually do to, or what the sound will do to the shape, you'll see now.
So that's the shape being dictated by the sound.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So that's the shape being dictated by the sound. I should also stress that that's not like an exact science. That's just me like arbitrarily like connecting numbers to shape, if that makes sense.
Yes, cool.
So back to this idea of like Boba Kiki. There's a researcher at UE called Maisie Palmer. It's got this really cool study. So if you scan the QR code, that'll take you to a paper where they're talking about like if sounds are squishy, and they touch on this Boba Kiki experiment quite a lot. And this like translation between like using shape and sound as well. I was able to go to the Audio Developer Conference in Bristol. It was like last year, thanks to Watershed and the Springboard Fund. I was able to get a ticket. And this is a quite interesting video as well. It's just 50 minutes long, which you can again scan, and you can see him talk about more of that. So we've been looking at impulse responses and convolution reverb, but again, I found with kind of changing shape and creating impulse responses that I didn't get, it was hard to get like repeatable effects, which is what would be useful in a kind of post-production audio environment. So we're going to go back to this idea of like an algorithmic reverb, which acts like a sampler. We get given kind of knobs and settings which we can change. And then we can use this idea of using size. Is the shape convex or concave? What kind of shape it is? The absorbance parameters, and also microphone position, listen, things like that. And a lot of reverbs do already have that. You'll see things such as like room size, reverb time, dampening or absorption, things like that. That's the same slide. So yeah, you can kind of change parameters, but I don't think you're going to be able to hear anything. So again, I kind of went back to creating this kind of graphical user interface. And in this case, I'm kind of just manipulating the shape. To change things like pitch. And I can stretch the sound to make it longer. Or I can kind of make it quicker. And then in there, actually, there's something called formant shifting, which I'll talk about more in a second. Apologies. There is meant to be something up there.
Stevie got to sleep.
Yeah. All right.
Controller.
Yeah, sorry.
Got bored of hearing the same line over and over again, didn't it?
Yeah. Apologies, technical difficulties. Yeah. Yeah, do you want me to unplug it and plug it back in again?
So the warp setting on that one I really liked.
Yeah.
The quality of it is really, really good. I need to play with that some more.
Yeah. The pulling, making it like kind of like a shape that you could actually manipulate around.
Even, yeah. But yeah, have you put that one up on your page?
Yes, it's on GitHub, so anyone can use it online. It's a web app, so it's not something you use inside audio software. But there's some plugins which we'll show you in a second, hopefully.
Yeah, and those are all accessible. I've used one of them fairly recently on another project that I'm working on, and it's very usable and doesn't crash, which is always good.
That is always good to make a plugin.
Yeah. Doesn't crash the whole system, and
not like now.
Sound quality is great.
Yeah,
but we've crashed this, so.
Fair. So, what's everyone up to on the weekend? Yeah, show me to do. Sweet. All right. Ooh, that was something.
Yeah.
Plug it in now. I knew it.
There we go.
It. All right. Cool. So, again, kind of tidying up what we looked at before. Again, this is a shape where we can manipulate it using very simple parameters, and that's going to change like a few things. So in this case, we've got a few different modes. We've got the reverb mode, so we can change the room size by just like pulling the shape out. If you put it to the right, you're going to get like dampening. And it's also got a freeze mode, so if you hold it down, you kind of freeze the track. And then you've got your pitch shift, which we can pitch, change the pitch, and also pitch formant as well. That one kind of sounds like a little, you know. Anyway, so to be able to use it inside a digital audio workstation, I did find it quite difficult to create these kind of 3D graphical user interfaces to work inside software, which editors use and designers and things like that. So I then created a kind of a more manageable interface using this kind of 2D slider. So this is Spectral Blend. This is available on GitHub and something called Studio Rack, which you're going to see a link to in a second. It's an audio effect which allows us to change pitch and formant. So these are known as like spectral processing. When we talk about shifting pitch, we're thinking about changing the pitch or fundamental frequency of the sound. So if I go high or low, that's like pitch shifting. But if I want to change the character of my voice, like the tonality and things like that, it's known as the formant. So formants are used a lot in like speech recognition and things like that. But you can actually shift them and you can kind of create these interesting sounds. Alongside that, we've got a tilt EQ. So we mentioned EQ before, like bass and treble, kind of like either like boosting the lows while also pushing down the highs and vice versa, like a tilt. And again, it's available on Mac OS, Windows, Linux in a variety of plugin formats, including for Pro Tools on AAX. And we'll just look at a demonstration of this here. It doesn't usually sound that distorted. I don't know why it's so loud then. But anyway, so you can kind of move around this 2D space and able to pick out sounds. Now, if you start off with like, I don't know, sound of a chicken, you can kind of manipulate that to get kind of different chickens and stuff like that. It's available on Studio Rack, so it's just like an online repository. All the plugins on there are open source, so you can take the code, manipulate, do whatever you want with it, and you can download the installers there. And it's also available on GitHub. So that QR code will take you to the GitHub where you can take the code, do whatever you want with it. I don't really mind. It's all free. And it's also got installers on there. But if you do want the installers to download on your computer without them to do any like weird terminal stuff, you can also just scan that QR code.
Yeah, I don't do that stuff.
Yeah, so we use that. Apologies for the distorted sound. I promise you it does sound way better if you use it on your laptop. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
We'll now go for questions. And yeah, cheers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, and yeah, so the QR code will take you to Wounded Buffalo Sound Studio's webpage, and this will just take you to my GitHub, which there's other projects like the graphical user interfaces you saw earlier. That code is all available on there, and you can do whatever you want with it, because it's all open source.
Any questions? Nick, you're looking keen.
Hi, that was great. Sorry, I missed the start of your talk, so if I'm repeating things, forgive me.
No.
Firstly, this is really cool. I've been beta testing. Rob Clough's made a system called Noise Canvas, which is like another spectral like visual.
Oh, and you can like draw it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can do a lot of FFT stuff, and it's like it's so nice to be able to do something visually and generate samples that you then work with elsewhere. It's really nice to get out of sliders and stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
Your the GUI of the kind of circle that you're manipulating, and then you're applying FFT processing, spectral processing to the impulse responses to change them.
So which one is it? Was it this one?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So what's happening is with this shape, once you change it, it's going to create this impulse, which is going to be like a virtual kind of clap in the space. And it's going to bounce around and then create an impulse response, which is then being convolved. So if from like a really raw raw processing, you are taking like, you're kind of doing like FFT processing like on the input sound, and then it's doing something called convolution where you're just mixing or multiplying the sound with the impulse response. But this is just using, this is on the web. So this is just using web audio. It's just like a library which you can use.
And the coordinates of the mesh of that shape are directly mapped to the impulse response and shaping that.
Yeah. So it's like, so inside here you see this yellow dot. From there, that's like our source and also our listener position. So from there, it's just going to shoot a bunch of rays out.
Cool.
And it's going to plot this.
Yeah, you're using ray forming.
Yeah.
Because I saw that, and like the first thing I thought was I've had so many conversations with people about this desire to mix LiDAR scanning and like ambisonic convolution, and that you're able to like literally map the internal of a space. I'm like, that's a very similar process. So I thought that was really exciting.
Yeah. So so this is all like mono, so it's all like one channel. But if we look at this, mention this microphone. This is an ambisonic microphone.
Yeah.
So this will actually pick up directionality. And then again, if we used ambisonic, if we used ambisonics in this, then again you could get like a more directional sound, do it over binaural, do it over multiple speakers, things like that.
Super cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
Really interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ruth.
Yeah, this might be something you've already said, but it's not my domain, so I'm just trying to comprehend, but it's really, really fascinating. And so I didn't understand quite the GUI at the end, like how you'd be using that. What I wanted to know was just like, how would somebody who works in this field like end up kind of habitually using it, like you were saying, because it feels like when you go into this domain, then the shapes are so complex. It's really hard to have like a shorthand in your head for like, oh, this sound really needs that kiki shape with that flat bit on the side that was kind of a bit like that, but not that one, the smaller one, like it's like very, very complex. So like, how does somebody who wants to use it as a tool just be like, oh, right, I need that shape or that one,
Yeah. So I within the 6 months, I didn't actually get to a conclusion. So how this one here works is that this is actually just sending these like shape parameters to like some plugins I've got in Reaper. So these kind of things you see here are just parameters being sent. So this I kind of had as more of like like an alternative to the sliders. So again, it would be hard to like reproduce unless you had like some templates, like you can make some defaults and things like that. So that's why towards the end, I kind of didn't focus on the reverb and went straight into kind of the pitch shifting because reverb plugins do quite a lot already. Like, so then I made it into more of like an interface, which is kind of easier to manage regarding like what points to choose. But yeah, towards the end of the fellowship exercise was more like I just couldn't figure out a way which like made sense within post-production. Because again, it's like you want things like repeatable. And in this example, I will just maybe like turn on the volume a bit on this one. So like in here, we're just using XY, so like my mouse cursor to change those parameters. So like that's quite hard to reproduce because you've got 2,000 by 1,000 pixels, you know. So it's more like in this way, it's more of like kind of like a gestural tool. Could be good for like performance, things like that. But for dialing things in, it's like the 2D is like a bit more easier to kind of manage. But definitely, if I had more time, I would like to explore this in like a way which like you had like presets and things like that. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I think for me, it's good to just have something to play with as well, because I like to kind of just put a sound in and start messing with things, you know, and you don't really know what you're going to get, you know, especially when you're dealing with natural world sounds, you know, they all behave differently in these different boxes that you're going to put them into. So it's really nice to have something that you can just kind of grab and move around like that. And see what happens.
Thanks for a great talk, guys. I think I'm going to be hearing cow sounds in my dreams now. Question from an online viewer. Have you considered how the shapes could be used to work with deaf practitioners? The visualization of sound could be really interesting there. A step further might be with 3D printing and touch.
Yeah, so that's something which definitely like, if you were to look at the, sorry, hang on. So again, with like Maisie Palmer's work at UE, where it's like focusing on touch and how a touch is associated to sound, like the idea of sounds being like squishy. Yeah, I mean, throughout this talk, I was trying to use like sound and also like spectrograms, which you can sometimes see when you plot the sound, to kind of visualize what the sound might be, because there's not much information you get from like a waveform. It just tells you like how loud the sound is.
Like
but yeah, like that. But
all that.
That's never not going to be funny. So the idea of like how you translate that sound into shape is kind of what visualizers have been doing for like ages, right? Like all kinds of like sonic visualizers and stuff. And again, using those kind of audio descriptors we talked about before, like centroid, flux, all those kind of things. Maybe there's like a more informed way to create that language from like audio descriptors to a shape, which is more universally like kind of accepted as that kind of translation. But me personally, I haven't looked into it. But like I said, there's really good research by people in UE at the moment, focusing in on like tactility, you know. Yeah.
I think there's a question over here.
Hi, this is great.
Hiya.
Really, really interesting work. And I think maybe my question slightly might repeat what you've just said. But
Sure.
During your research, did you explore how just the unadulterated sound could then create a shape? How that might inform the shape, or did you just? I mean, you just touched on software that actually you can use to actually do that?
So with again, might need to turn the sound down just a little bit for this again. So with this one, I was again trying to I was playing around with the idea of there being like a language.
Is it there? Is it that dial there?
Yeah, like this is just sound, give me numbers, change the shape with those numbers kind of thing. But it wasn't like massively like informed, because I didn't know like from like I don't know, like an anthropological point of view and like, you know, what sound means and things like that. It was more just like kind of playing around with mapping sounds, you know, which
it strikes me that was almost you kind of looking at the problem from the other side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I was sort of saying, oh, what happens to a sound if we put it into this shape? And you're kind of saying,
The other way
okay,
around,
what happens if we go the other way? You know, what does the sound look like? Which is interesting. I didn't even know you were doing that. I knew you were up to something.
I was just hanging out. Yeah. But again, there's like different. There's all kinds of visualizers out there which you can look at, which might do it in like a different way. It's just what I decided to do. And, you know. Yeah. Cool. Sweet.
Anybody else got a question? Yeah. Right.
Sort of grisly tangent question. Do you know if anyone's experimented with capturing impulse responses of like a chest cavity of an animal or anything like that?
So I did look into a point of looking at I can't pronounce it, larynx? How do you say it? Larynx.
Yeah.
So like vocal, like the vocal throat, because it kind of creates these like resonances. Because again, this is all relating back to the idea of kind of creating animal sounds. I played around with some of those, trying to capture impulse responses, but most of how this works is that you're producing air or like noise through it, and then it's acting like a resonator. So using it in reverb didn't have like such a huge change. And you can see videos online where they've like 3D printed scans of larynxes, and they just have like I don't know, like a mattress pump, maybe something a bit more advanced, but then it's just blowing air through and it's acting like a resonator. There are ways. There was one way that possibly you can like analyze the resonances of a shape and maybe use that as like, but it was like it was like that was like proper like computer science stuff that was just like way beyond what I knew, you know. But yeah. So towards the end, even though the shape was very like 3D, I kind of wanted it to be like I was like manipulating the larynx to make the larynx of the animal I wanted to create, if that makes sense. Yeah. But with the impulse responses, it didn't make much sense.
Nice. Super cool. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks.
Anybody else? If not, we will say thank you again to Kyle and Jonny.
Cool. Thank you very much.
And you're both hanging around for a little bit if anyone wants to talk.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, definitely.
All right, before you go, if you want to stick around and hot desk today or find out more about what we do, please come find one of the studio team and we'll be happy to help. Studio team, give us a wave. Here we are. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. If you like what you've seen here today and you want to help us keep bringing you great talks like this one, please do visit watershed.co.uk/donate. We are a charity. We really do rely on the generosity of our supporters to continue our work. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.